Man of honor? Jerry Kilroy answered the phone. Hello? Jerry, it's me. It was Kelly, Jerry's older sister. Her voice was strained. Hey, Kelly, what's up? Dad, he's gotten worse. I should have called you. Jerry shuddered. His father had barely turned 68 when he'd had a heart attack 3 months ago. He'd had successful triple bypass surgery, stayed in the hospital for a week, and then, when his condition stabilized, he'd been discharged. What happened? Jerry asked. He was fine when I was here. I know, but, he got depressed. The doctor says he had a stroke. A stroke? Oh, shit, Jerry exclaimed. But last week the doctor was sure he was recovering well. I thought he had recovered and was now recuperating at home. He is at home. At Uncle Tony's, of course. The stroke was supposedly minor, but with his poor health, even a minor stroke is serious. Oh, yeah. Thank goodness the worst didn't happen, he replied. He knew that after the surgery, his parents had moved in with their friends, the Blaylocks. In their marriage, his father had always been the stronger partner. He was the rock that his emotionally fragile mother held on to. Jerry remembered from an early age that his mother never handled stress well. So when her husband came down with a heart attack, it was no surprise that she turned to her old friend, Agnes Blaylock, and her husband, Anthony. While not blood relatives, they had always been family friends. Jerry, Kelly, and his other sister Kathy considered the Blaylocks almost family. They all grew up calling them Uncle Tony and Aunt Agnes. No, it's bad, Jerry. I've never seen him like this. Can't you come back? Dad really needs us right now, and Mom needs us too. I'm sure he does, he agreed. Okay, let me handle things with Olivia. I'm not sure she can take a vacation from her job. I'll probably go back on my own. Okay, hurry if you can. Dad's not feeling well. How's Mom doing? There was a pause before Kelly answered uncertainly. She's fine. That sounded strange, Jerry thought. He expected her to explain further. Instead, there was another long pause before Kelly said in a serious tone, I need to talk to you about something. It's really important. Really? About what? I don't want to talk about it over the phone. I'll meet you when you get here. Just text me before you get here. I need to talk to you alone first before I see my dad. Sounds mysterious. Can't you give me a clue? Just get here soon. When you get here, I'll fill you in. I will. I'll see you in a few days then. Thanks, Jerry. We'll be very grateful. I can't wait to see you. Me too, Kelly. See you soon. Jerry hung up. It was a strange ending to their conversation. He couldn't imagine what needed to be said that she couldn't say over the phone. He would have to find out later. Jerry knew that his father's health had not been good lately. He never liked going to the gym, and he wasn't in the habit of exercising. He had worked as an auto mechanic for many years, though. He was drafted into the Army right out of high school and was trained and fixed military vehicles while serving in the Vietnam War. Even though Frank Kilroy was not in combat, he was always proud of his military service, but he never talked about it to anyone outside of his family. Even within the family circle, he only mentioned it on rare occasions. If asked, he always replied that service was his duty and he was proud to have served. Jerry once asked if he had ever been tempted to dodge the draft. He said it as a joke to give his dad's chain a little jerk. A stern look and a firm answer. Never, never in this damned life, Dad replied, making it clear that this was not an option. Jerry never joked about the subject again. Jerry knew a little about his time in Vietnam. Frank had been stationed far away from the major combat areas, but apparently not far enough away, because a couple years later he got into a firefight. He was seriously wounded when an explosion sent shrapnel into his neck and legs. The neck injury went away, but the leg injury was complicated. He has walked with a pronounced limp ever since. Frank ended his 4 years of service in a hospital bed in Saigon before being sent back to the United States. A few years later, he met his wife Edith. They married and had Kelly immediately. 2 years later, Katie. They decided that 2 girls were enough. Edith started on the pill, and for the next 10 years they were a family of 4. It was a surprise to Edith to find out she was pregnant again when she was in her late 30s. Next came their accidental baby Jerry, whom they loved as much as the other 2 children, even though it was a surprise. Upon returning home from work, Jerry informed his wife Olivia of his father's deteriorating health. As expected, she had already used all of her vacation days during their last visit to see his father. She couldn't afford to take any more of them. So Jerry took some time off the following week, drove out of the house Friday night after work, loaded up the car, and kissed his wife goodbye. It was a 4-hour drive to his hometown, but he was in a hurry and tried to get there faster. A few miles before his destination, he texted his sister. A message came back. "Meet me at Cassin's Diner. You know where, don't you?" Jerry texted back. "Yes, 20 minutes." Kelly was already sitting in the booth waiting and waved at him. Her light brown hair and soft facial features reminded him of their mother, who was a natural blonde. Kathy had a little bit of her in her, too. She had blonde hair and fair skin. Jerry always felt he looked like his father, even though he was taller than him and had darker hair. He was also more muscular than his father, had dark, almost black hair, and could grow a beard in a couple weeks. Even shaving in the mornings, he had a distinct 5 o'clock stubble by the time he got home from work. Kelly jumped up from her seat and they exchanged warm hugs and kisses. "It's good to have you here, Jerry." "Sure you are. I want to help." Jerry noticed the worry on her face. Something serious was bothering her. They ordered coffee and each took a brownie. When the waitress left, Kelly gave her younger brother a sizing glance and quickly lowered her eyes. "I don't know how to tell you this," she said, staring at the table and biting her lip. "Just say it, Kelly. I know it bothers you. Okay?" She took a deep breath and exhaled. "Jerry, there's something you don't know about our family. It has to do with Uncle Tony." "Okay. You remember that Mom and the Blaylocks have been friends since college?" "I know that. Mom and Aunt Agnes shared a room. They went to the same college and that's where they met Uncle Tony." "I know that too. A couple years after college, Mom met Dad at some party and here we are." "So?" "Well, they've all been friends ever since. Mom and Dad got married and a few years later, Tony and Agnes got married too." "Yeah, Mom was Agnes's maid of honor. That's right, I don't know if you know that. Before you were born, Dad had to leave town for a few months to go to mechanic school. He was new to the company, and the classes were pretty far from home. During his training, the company only allowed him to come home once and only for a couple days. He used his veteran's benefit to pay for the training. During the time he was away, his mom seemed to get depressed and go a little crazy." "Crazy? What did that mean?" Kelly shook her head and mumbled, "She did something stupid, Jerry. She had an affair with Tony." "What?" he shouted a little too loudly. The other visitors looked over, so he tried to keep his voice down and said more quietly, "Mom, she was having an affair with Uncle Tony? What the hell?" "Uh-huh, Mom is definitely an idiot. I know that now." Jerry sat back in his seat and tried to recover from this unexpected news. His mother was cheating on his father with Tony Blaylock? Unbelievable. "When did you find out?" he asked her. Kelly looked away, looking guilty. "I knew about it almost from the beginning. How was that possible? I knew she was seeing him when Dad was at school. She'd hire a babysitter for us, and he'd pick her up from home. She'd say they were going out to dinner or to a show. Dad and Tony were friends, and he was always at our house anyway. I just thought he was being friendly at the time, trying to cheer her up because Mom was so sad when Dad was gone." "Didn't you think it was strange that he was picking her up and taking her to dinner? Where was Agnes, by the way?" "I didn't think it was unusual at the time," Kelly said, genuinely trying to make him understand. Agnes had been with him a few times, so she was certainly aware of what was going on. They'd come to the house to pick up Mom, and as they left, they'd laugh and chat happily. It seemed innocent enough. There were also times when he would come alone and do some small job that Mom needed. I thought it was just a friend helping her out while Dad wasn't home. That's all I thought at the time, and Mom let me think that. It wasn't until I was in high school that I realized she was cheating on him." "Did it take you that long?" "I'm sorry, Jerry. I should have said something to you sooner, but I guess I was just too trusting back then. I realize that now." "Don't let it bother you, Kelly. You were just a kid and you didn't know everything." There was a pause before Jerry asked, "I take it Kathy knows too?" She threw him a sad look. "I can't have any secrets from her. You know, sisters, you know." "Yes, I understand." Jerry was dizzy with the news. There was no way he'd expected anything like this. He watched his older sister fidget in her seat, her eyes darting around as she took another breath. This was a bad sign. This isn't over yet, is it? Yes, unfortunately. She answered sadly. It's very hard. I hate to tell you this, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it. We already had too many secrets. She looked him straight in the face and stated flatly, Jerry, I'm not sure Dad's your biological father. What, me? Really? Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you might be Uncle Tony's biological son. Kelly's voice trailed off as she made her statement. Then she broke down and brought her hands up to her face. She started sobbing slightly, looking at her dark-haired brother who was flabbergasted. You've got to be kidding me. You've got to be kidding. Oh my God. A tear came to his eye and he quickly brushed it away before she could see it. No, but I wish I could, she replied with a sob. But I'm not sure. I hope I'm wrong. I talked to my mom about it the other day. She said she doesn't know for sure either, but she thinks that's when Tony got her pregnant. You showed up a little over 9 months after they'd already started an affair. And your resemblance to Tony is too great to deny. Dad never mentioned it, so I don't think he was aware of the possibility until... It took Kelly a moment to stop sobbing and speak. Until a few weeks ago when Mom let the cat out of the bag. What a stupid fool she was. He was still recovering from his heart attack when she told him about her cheating. Dad has been depressed ever since. That's probably why he had the stroke, because he took the news so hard. What? Jerry exhaled angrily. I know he's crushed. Damn her! Why did Mom have to open her big mouth after all this, especially when he's in such a fragile state? It's probably a medication mix-up, Kelly said. We all think it is. Mom's been on antidepressants for a long time. You know how she is. But she recently got a new doctor. I think she met him at the hospital when Dad had surgery. A new doctor? For what? Oh, I don't know. Mom was always a hypochondriac. She hung around the hospital and no doubt met a bunch of doctors there. She must have persuaded one of them to take her on as a patient. I imagine she didn't tell him about all the medications she was taking at the time because he wrote her a new prescription for nerves, and unfortunately that medication conflicted with some of the ones she was already taking. This made her somewhat delusional, and she told the whole story to her father during their argument. Jerry sat stunned in his seat, his brain working on overdrive, trying to assimilate all this new disturbing information. So he might not be my real father? Jerry sighed thoughtfully. No, he is your real father, Kelly exclaimed. Oh my God, Jerry, don't ever think otherwise, please. I know, of course he's real, he replied embarrassed. You're absolutely right, Kelly. He's my daddy and I love him. Whether he's my bio dad or not, I know he loves me, he always has. And he will always be my real dad. Thank you, Kelly sobbed and reached across the table to take his hands. For a few poignant moments, brother and sister held hands and shared their grief. Kelly hated telling her brother the truth, but he had to know. After a few moments, Jerry said, shaking his head, What a mess this place is in. Tony's a jerk for taking advantage of her, and Mom's an idiot. Poor Dad. I can only imagine how he feels about her betrayal. His family is everything to him. I can't believe Mom could be such an unbelievable fool. A secret she's kept for decades is suddenly revealed when Dad is fighting for his life. What are the odds of that? He didn't take it well. How are things now? The Blaylocks still have him? Yeah, for the moment anyway. I can imagine he doesn't like living under the same roof as his wife's ex-lover. But he's pretty helpless, and Mom doesn't want to come home to take care of him. She said she's frustrated and needs Tony's help, Kelly added in a bitter tone. And of course, old Uncle Tony is very happy to help her. She swallowed to suppress her bitterness and continued, But, as you'd expect, Dad hates him now. He's made that clear to Tony, and he won't let Mom help him with anything, and neither does Agnes. So how's he coping? Not well at all. Of course he needs help. There was no one to help him without his mom, so they took him to the Blaylocks. Tony's given him a private room in his house and hired a nurse to look after him. He has a physical therapist. Of course, Tony can afford it. Yeah, the asshole's rich. We all know that. It's so sad, Jerry. I visit him regularly. But he won't talk to me or Katie. I think he found out that we all knew, but we didn't tell him. Now he feels like the whole family has betrayed him. He's so depressed I almost cry when I see him." I can imagine. Poor guy. What a cruel reckoning for all his hard work. He's been a faithful husband and a great father all his life. Honest, hard-working, a great provider, and look how that turned out. The brother and sister sat staring at the table, deep in thought. After a while, Kelly looked across the table and met her brother's gaze. "I know this is a shock to you. I hated to tell you," she admitted. "But I love you, Jerry. We all do. Don't think it changes anything between us. Katie knows I'm talking to you, and she'll say the same thing. She can't be here now, but she will be tomorrow. She says hi to you, by the way." "Thanks, Kelly. You'll always be my sister, no matter what, and so will Kathy." Kelly signaled for the bill and asked, "Are you ready to visit Daddy?" "Yes, I really need to see him and help him if I can. I hope he won't take it too hard. You know how he is." "Yeah, he's always had a keen sense of fairness. Right or wrong, no gray areas. That's why he's in so much pain. He can't accept Mom's apology or her reasons why she did what she did. He's a broken man, Jerry. I don't think he said 3 words to Mom since they figured it out. And he's looking fiercely at Tony. I can't blame him, even after all this time," he said. "Mom has known about their affair for decades, but for Dad it's a fresh wound in his heart. The love he thought Mom had for him is now forever tarnished." Mom certainly doesn't feel that way," Kelly said sarcastically. "She acts like she just told him she wrecked the car. Mom says that her affair is far in the past and that she hasn't been with Tony in years. She doesn't understand why he's taking it so hard. I told her that the fact that her affair is long in the past hurts Dad just as much. For him, it happened very recently, and he still feels the pain. He is still very upset." Jerry and Kelly drove separately. As they pulled into the long driveway, Jerry saw the familiar sight of the Blaylocks' big house. It was a 2-story mini mansion with a huge landscaped yard, a swimming pool, and a circular flower garden. Uncle Tony owned 3 car dealerships and several other businesses. His home was a symbol of wealth in this small community. Frank Kilroy and Anthony Blaylock became an unusual pair of friends. Tony's business success, contrasted with Kilroy's modest financial situation, made their friendship unlikely over the years. Of course, now that Jerry had learned of Tony and his mother's affair, it made a lot more sense. Jerry and Kelly were met at the door by a somber Aunt Agnes. Kelly and Agnes hugged and kissed, then Jerry put his arm around the older woman. The hug was tight, and when they pulled away, it became awkward. She was still a beautiful woman, slender, nicely dressed, with perfectly styled silver hair. "Thank you for coming, Jerry," Agnes told him sincerely. "I hope your being here will cheer up your father." "I hope so, too." When they were ushered into the living room, Uncle Tony appeared. He was over 6 feet tall, and his stout figure was dressed in an expensive silk suit. On his feet were patent shoes made of expensive leather. Smiling confidently, the older man stepped forward, hugged Kelly, and shook Jerry's hand. Jerry noticed his slicked-back black hair mottled with gray. It gave him a solid look. "It's good to see you again, Jerry," Tony said with a smile. "I wish circumstances had worked out better, but I'm really glad you're here." "Me too." "Tony." Jerry wanted to call him Uncle Tony, but held back. "Would either of you like a drink?" "No, thanks," Kelly said, and Jerry just shook his head. "Where's Dad?" he asked. "In the room," Tony said, pointing proudly to the big room. "We had it specially remodeled for him when he was discharged. Full hospital bed, power wheelchair, everything he needs. All he has to do is ask." "Sure." Jerry and Kelly left the tall man and walked into the former den. Jerry was shocked at how small and helpless his father looked. The sturdy, confident man he'd spent his entire life looking up to was a shrunken shell of what he used to be. His head hung to the side, and he stared apathetically at his visitors as he sat in his wheelchair by the window. Jerry walked over and put his arm around him. Frank lifted his hand, which was still working, and held it out to his son for a weak handshake. "Hey, Dad. Sorry to hear you had a relapse," Jerry said, trying to start a conversation. Frank nodded weakly. His face expressed no emotion, but his eyes were fixed on his son's face. He tried to say something, but the words came out slurred. Jerry leaned closer to hear the man's faint words. At first, he started to pull away, nodding as if he understood. But Frank held his son's hand resolutely, repeating the words many times before he saw some recognition in Jerry's eyes. During their uncertain conversation, Tony and Agnes left the room to leave them alone. Jerry finally realized that he was telling him that he loved him and that he would always be his son. Jerry felt tears come to his eyes. He heard a sniffle next to him and looked at Kelly. She had heard what Frank had said and began to cry, covering her face with her hands. Jerry began to choke too. "You too, Dad," Jerry said to the old man, his voice shaking. "I love you, and I always will. I've heard about the trouble with Mom, but it doesn't matter to me in the slightest. Nothing has changed between us. It never will, Dad." Frank put one hand up in the air. The other wasn't working too well. Jerry finally realized that his father wanted another hug. He leaned in again, and one arm of his father's hugged him with surprising strength. He didn't let go right away. His mouth was next to Jerry's ear, trying to whisper something. Jerry had to listen carefully to understand. Frank's words were inaudible, but he was saying something he thought was very important. Yules, or moves, or rules, something like that. Maybe Frank was on edge too, because his words were so inarticulate. He couldn't exactly say what he wanted. Jerry sensed that his father was beginning to get upset. So he pulled away, feeling uncomfortable at not being able to understand him. They sat with Frank for a while longer while Jerry talked about his wife and various trivia about his work and family. Frank's expression turned sour. He looked away from his son and fell silent. "I'll be back in a little while, Dad." Frank didn't give any sign that he had heard him. Edith was in the large, expensively furnished kitchen sipping coffee. There were empty plates on the table. She must have just finished eating. His mother was dressed in a colorful print robe with slippers on her feet. Her hair was nicely styled and she was wearing a little makeup. She saw her son enter the room and her face spread into a wide smile. She stood up as Jerry entered and hugged him tightly. "Oh, Jerry," she exclaimed. "I'm so glad to see you. So glad you've come." Kelly called. "I had to come to see Dad," Jerry told her. "We met just the other day and she told me something interesting about you and Tony. It's a pretty interesting story." "I'm sorry I kept you in the dark, darling," Edith explained with a slight sadness in her eyes. "But I didn't want to upset you or your father. You can see how badly he takes it. I wish I hadn't said anything at all." Wow, Jerry thought. She didn't seem too upset, though, and he was a little surprised at how calmly she took it. Her confession was probably what had caused her husband's stroke. Jerry thought she would be embarrassed by her infidelity, or at least more remorseful considering it was her fault. "I don't know what came over me," she continued with a sigh. "I knew it would hurt Frank to find out I'd cheated on him. That's why I never told him. It was something just between me and Tony and Agnes, of course. It never broke up my marriage, and it never affected Frank all those years ago." "How long had it been going on?" Jerry asked in a neutral tone. "Oh, for a while now and then," his mother told him carelessly. "Tony and I dated a bit at school before he married Agnes. Nothing serious. Everyone dated back then. Agnes had a couple of boyfriends she went out with from time to time, and we went out with Tony. We were all such good friends even after we broke up and Tony started dating Agnes. We were still close, and always went to threesome parties and stuff." As she told her story, her gaze shifted from her son's concerned face to the vague stain on the wall. It was obvious that she was remembering a very pleasant time in her life. With a wistful expression on her face, she confessed, "Even after Frank and I were married, we still saw Tony and Agnes often. We often went out. They were at our wedding, and we were at theirs. It was such a fun time. When we had Kelly and Katie, it was one big happy family. All 6 of us, I mean. I wish it would never end." Suddenly, the expression on her face hardened. "But when your father left me to take that damned course, it made me feel so lonely. I was the only one taking care of your sisters and doing all the household chores. It was too hard. Tony helped me through that hard time. Without his support, I would have gone crazy. When your dad came home, I stopped seeing Tony so much. We still managed to see each other, just not as much. He was so nice about everything. Took me all over town and introduced me to a lot of people. He's a really wonderful man, you know." I hope you didn't tell Dad about that, Jerry replied, frowning. Edith was startled by his exclamation and whispered, "What didn't I say?" "That the guy his wife cheated on him with is so great," Jerry said sharply. "A great guy he considered his friend, a friend who basically stabbed him in the back. Not the best thing to say to a sick old man." "You don't have to act like that, Jerry," she frowned back. "Of course I know that. I'm easy to judge now." She waved her hand at him contemptuously. "I'm not a fool, you know that. And I didn't say anything like that to him. I just let him know the truth about what happened back then. He must appreciate me being so honest." "I'm sure Dad's very happy to hear the truth," Jerry said sharply. "Maybe he's not," she replied reproachfully. "But now that he knows, he'll just have to deal with it. It's all in the past, and it's too late to worry about it now. Besides, Frank has much bigger problems than the silly affair I had years ago. I'll try to help him through it as best I can, but he needs to help himself too." "I'm sure you will," Jerry spat angrily, resenting his mother's indifference to such serious matters. He spun nimbly on his heels and walked away before he could explode at his stupid mother and her reckless behavior. He wanted to ask about his origins, but he was too upset right now. That conversation would have to wait until another day. Kelly was nearby and must have heard his angry retort. She walked in, sat down with his mom, and threw him a strange look as he left the room. Jerry went into the library to think. Through the sliding glass doors, he saw Agnes sitting at a table drinking coffee on the terrace at the back of the house. He went out and sat down at the table beside her. She put her arm around him and poured him a cup of coffee, and they started chatting. "We never thought it was a bad thing," Agnes told him honestly. "Edith and I were so close then. We were roommates, you know, and we did everything together." As she told him, she cast a knowing look at Jerry. "She'd met Tony before me, but when I started dating him, she still joined us on dates. I think Tony still had feelings for her. So it was natural to have her around. She was such a beautiful girl, everyone loved her, and I really enjoyed her company. Tony did too. We didn't see it as anything bad." "And when Daddy went away to school," Jerry asked probingly, "you and Tony just started taking her out to dinner?" "Yes, dinner, dancing, drinking, laughing." She sighed, staring wistfully into space, reliving the memories. "God, Jerry, how much fun we had in those days. Edith, Tony, and I were like the Three Musketeers. Your father wasn't much of a socialite. He was a bit of a homebody and didn't give your mother much socializing. Maybe he worked too hard for his family." "Perhaps," Agnes agreed instantly. "I don't think he made much money in those days. But you're right, he worked hard. When he went away to study, it was normal for Tony and me to include your mom in our plans, like we did back in college. We had so much fun." "So you agreed to Tony's affair?" "I guess so," she said nonchalantly. "Tony is a handsome guy, an unconventional person, you know. We've always been sociable. I knew there was a chance he'd be walking around behind my back. I felt that if he was going to go rogue, it would be better with Edith than with anyone else. She wouldn't try to take him away from me, and we were already very close. It was just a natural combination. Like I said, we didn't see it as a bad thing." She glanced at Jerry and noticed his devastated look. She walked over and patted his arm. "Don't feel bad, honey. No one was hurt. I mean, no one would have been hurt if Edith hadn't blabbed about it the other day. And don't blame Mommy too much. She was alone, and Tony caught her at a weak moment. He can be very persuasive, you know." She laughed out loud. "He's just a charmer. Always has been and always will be." "I'm sure he is." Jerry was even more disgusted than when he left his mother. Neither of them considered the affair with Tony a cause for concern. He left the older woman alone with her pleasant thoughts of days gone by and returned to the house. His thoughts were restless until it suddenly occurred to him what his father had earlier tried to say. "Tools! He needs his fucking tools!" Jerry exclaimed excitedly, pleased that he had finally figured it out. Frank had always prided himself on his tools. He had a hand-picked set of craftsman tools that he had bought years ago and kept in the garage. At a time when he had little money, these tools cost him a fortune. In his mind, they had always been a symbol of his talent as a master mechanic. Jerry decided it was nostalgia, and he should want them around to remember his better days. He went back to his father's room and saw him looking out the window. "These are tools, aren't they, Dad?" Jerry declared proudly. Want me to bring your old tools to you in the garage? The old man's bitter frown disappeared instantly. His eyes lit up and his head began to nod up and down impatiently. All right, I know where they lie. I think you want them here with you. I'll go get them, Dad. Be right back. Jerry drove to his parents' house. It wasn't far. He had his own key and he went into the garage, remembering the days of sitting there and watching his father work on the car, trying to make some money on the side for their poor family. It was so like him to work part-time to be able to do a few extra things for his wife and kids. He was a great father. Jerry felt a sad tear roll down his cheek and wiped it away. He just wanted his father to take away the pain of finding out that his wife had cheated on him with his best friend all those years ago. Jerry drove the tools back to Uncle Tony's house. Tony was gone, but his mom, Kelly, and Agnes were having a heated conversation in the kitchen. They didn't even notice him enter the house, as he headed straight for his father's room. Even with all his faults, Jerry couldn't help but notice how excited his father was to get the tools. He waved his only working hand in the air, pointing to a corner. Jerry put the tools where he gestured and sat down next to his father. They didn't speak. Both knew it was too difficult to understand. Jerry just looked at the old man with all the love he had. He saw his father's eyes peering out of his disfigured face, those wary eyes brighter than before. As he got up to leave, Frank invited him in for another hug. This time they hugged for a long time. The old man didn't want to let him go. Tears stood in his eyes, streaming down his cheeks when they finally parted. "You make me cry," Jerry openly admitted, feeling very emotional. He said to the old man, "I'll be back tomorrow, Dad. Don't worry, I'll help you get back on your feet. I didn't know all the things that happened before, but I do now. I'm here for you, and I'm going to help you. You'll be better than ever in no time. You hear me, old man?" Frank nodded enthusiastically. He watched intently as his tall, muscular, dark-haired son left the room. Jerry and Kelly left together. She was anxious to leave because there seemed to be tension between Kelly and the two older women. She didn't tell him what was wrong, but as she passed Jerry, she whispered, "Mom's a damn fool." "What?" Kelly shrugged but said nothing. Out loud, she said, "Let's go, Jerry. You can stay at my place if you don't have a hotel room. I'd be glad to see you." "Sure, if you don't mind." They drove to Kelly's and had a long talk about what their family would do. Feeling tired, Jerry went to the room Kelly had prepared for him. He was undressing in the bedroom when he heard a loud explosion in the distance. Even at this distance, it was so powerful that the windows of their house shook. He ran out of the room and almost ran into Kelly. "What the hell was that?" she asked with a concerned look. They both looked outside and saw a blaze in the distance, like there was a big fire somewhere nearby. "Oh, shit!" Jerry blurted out as the horrible thought struck him. "I hope I'm wrong, but I think we'd better get back to Tony's." "Why?" "I just need to check on Dad." She wanted to know why, but he wouldn't say. Jerry went back into the house and got dressed in less than a minute. Kelly dressed quickly, too, and went with Jerry, and he rushed back to the Blaylock mansion. It had been about half an hour since the explosion. As they turned the last corner, they saw the flashing emergency lights of fire and police cars in front of the Blaylock house. Tony's house was nearly destroyed. It looked like the bottom floor had gone up in flames, and the rest of the house had collapsed downward, engulfed in flames. Firefighters were pulling hoses, spraying water and trying to douse the flames. But it seemed futile as most of the house was already destroyed. "Oh my God," Kelly sobbed. "Mom and Dad, are they dead?" "I'm afraid so," Jerry said, hugging his sobbing sister. They told the police who they were, and the man just shook his head. "I don't think anyone made it out alive," he said sorrowfully. "When we arrived, the house was already engulfed in flames. No one could get out. It looks like there was some kind of explosion, possibly a gas explosion. We'll investigate and find out what caused it, but there's nothing we can do today. I'm sorry for your loss." Jerry drove Kelly home. They sat in the living room and barely slept. The next day, they went to the house and saw the detectives picking at the smoldering ashes. Jerry identified himself and was allowed to come closer. The detectives began to question him about what they knew. Jerry did not mention the tools he had brought, but did say that he believed there were 4 people in the house. Did you find anything? Jerry asked, worriedly. Any sign of my parents? Yes, we found 4 bodies, the man told them. 3 of them seem to be upstairs. The house is so badly damaged it's hard to tell. We'll have to identify them later during the autopsy. The man cast an oblique glance at them and said, Funny thing was the 4th body. Hard to say, but we think it was downstairs in the kitchen. In the kitchen? Kelly said. But the father lived in his study, right? Yeah. So this body was in the kitchen, the man continued. We know because it was near the stove, or what was left of it. What's so funny about that? Jerry asked. Don't tell anyone I told you that. The man moved closer, speaking in confidence. But since you're family, I think the problem is the stove, that it was a gas explosion. In fact, I'm sure of it. You are? Yeah. The gas line was shut off. I don't know how. The connection was damaged but survived the explosion. I can tell you from experience it wasn't a leak. That line was disconnected on purpose. The man leaned even closer and spoke quietly to the sibling. Funny enough, the body near the disconnected line was holding a pipe wrench in his hand. In his hand? Kelly asked in surprise. It wasn't blown off by the explosion? No, the wrench was attached to his hand, literally attached to it. The man said this with an almost amused expression on his face. He wiped the amusement from his face and continued more soberly. Apparently he or she must have shut down the line on purpose, whereupon it exploded and blew the house apart. But why the wire exactly? It coiled around his arm several times and held a wrench in his hand. He'd never seen anything like it before. Why would someone want to tape a wrench to his hand? I don't know, Jerry said. Maybe he wanted to make sure he'd hold on to it. I can't think of any other reason. All right, the man agreed cautiously. But why do it? For what purpose? I don't know. Jerry looked at his sister's worried face. When she started to speak, he quickly interrupted her and immediately said to the man, All right then. Thanks for the information. Good luck. Here's my card if you have any questions, the man said, politely handing him his card. I'm sorry about your parents. I don't know what happened, but it doesn't look like an accident right now. Jerry and Kelly looked at each other as they walked away. Now he knew for sure that his father had taken his final revenge on his unfaithful wife and her lover or lovers, if Agnes was involved, and Jerry had every reason to believe she was. He was sure that Frank wanted to ensure that his son knew that he was the one who had gotten his revenge on them. It was no accident. As he left, hugging his sobbing sister, Jerry whispered sadly, Message received, Dad. Jerry was sorry for the loss of his mother, and a little sad for the loss of Uncle Tony and Aunt Agnes. After all, they had been so close to him as a child. But he couldn't help but respect his father, a proud soldier and man of honor, now reduced to an infirm, almost helpless, disease-ridden man getting his final revenge for the worst insult a husband could face. It was so much like his stubborn father not to let that happen. God, I love you so much, Dad, Jerry let himself sob. I'm going to miss you at the end.